Well, I just think both sides now should just calm down a bit. I think most of us just want a sensible, rational debate and discussion. And I don't think people should be frightened into voting either way. I voted against joining the common market. I'm old enough to have had a vote originally. I voted against going to the common market. But the longer the European Union is developed now, I've come to a view, in the short term, because of the fragility of our economy, I think withdrawal would set us backwards. Withdrawal from a market that actually almost 50% of our trade is with, I think would destabilise our economy when we're in such a fragile position. But I want to move the debate on into, I think we should have a longer-term vision for Europe. And I think the key issues that we face in the 21st century, we have to do on an international level across Europe. And if you look at what those key issues are, they're about peace, to be frank. People just accept peace for granted within Europe. And we can't, it's only 70 years ago, my father was in the British Army. Before that, my grandfather was in the First World War. Europe has secured us peace, and by including more and more states in the European Union, we consolidate that peace.
Just trying to work out where you stand on this. Well, you said something rather interesting. You said, in the short term, I think we should stay. Do you mean in the long term,
no,
Labour's policy
I'm trying to say
what?
two things. One is, in the short term, I think there are risks, and I don't want to.
Are you going to vote in or out?
I'm going to vote in, but let me finish my point, David, if I can. In the long term, I think we've got to pitch this debate on the long-term future of our country and Europe. And the long term, the advantages of these, that we continue to secure peace, that the big issue that's facing us now is climate change. We can only tackle that on a European basis and globally. In addition to that, mass migration, we've just seen the problems that we've got now. We can only do that through cooperation. But also, I have to say as well, there's this argument we've ceded sovereignty to European institutions. We've ceded sovereignty to multinational corporations. And the only way we can tackle them and bring them under some form of democratic control, including making sure they pay their taxes, is on a European scale. So on those bases, both short-term and long-term, my view now is we remain in.
OK. You said, man with respect, please.
But John, you say that you want to stay in the European Union to give more democratic control over business. But whilst we're within the European Union, it's illegal to expand state ownership of business. So how does that aid democratic control of business?
That's a great question. If we stay in, we've got to have our reform agenda. And what's interesting, right the way across Europe now, we're working with socialist and social democratic and other progressive parties to develop that reform agenda, which means ensuring more democratic control at the local level, subsidiarity really works, but also come to common agreements how we democratically control, for example, the flow of capital, ensuring that we get the long-term investment that we need that shares prosperity right the way across Europe.
All right.
We can only do that on a European basis.